Something is off here. I can feel it.
We got 4 dead aliens on a football field. Another one just blew up half the sheriff's station.
We got a case to work.
Jesus Christ almighty. Unclench.
I get the feeling that everyone wants me gone.
What are you talking about, mate?
Everything feels like it's about to explode for no good reason.
Something is off here. 4 dead aliens on a football field. Another one just blew up half the sheriff's station. And Hal Jordan's body, or what appears to be Hal Jordan's body, is sitting in the stadium stands in Rushfield, Indiana, and somewhere between the 2016 flashback where he and Jon Stewart were still partners, and the 2026 present where Jon is standing over that body alone, the greatest Green Lantern in history either died, disappeared, or became something the universe is not prepared for. The Episode 2 trailer for HBO's Lanterns just dropped, and the questions it raises are bigger and darker than anything the first episode's cliffhanger suggested. Is Hal actually dead? Why is his ring missing? What is buried underneath Rushfield that has aliens exploding and androids waking up and the Guardians of Oa personally showing up in human disguise to handpick Jon Stewart for something they're not fully explaining? And why does the stadium where Jon keeps finding himself have green and yellow painted on the walls? The exact 2 colors that in Green Lantern mythology represent willpower and fear, and the specific visual combination that has been the setup for one of the most famous villain origin stories in DC history. Let's go through everything, because this trailer is packed and the lore underneath it rewards the people who go deep. Start with the timeline structure, because understanding it is the key to understanding how Hal Jordan can be central to the entire series while potentially being dead in the present day. The show is operating on 2 distinct eras, separated by a decade. Clean-shaven Jon Stewart is 2016, rookie, being trained, dragged into an alien conspiracy investigation by a veteran Hal Jordan who clearly knows more than he is sharing. Bearded Jon Stewart is 2026, the present day, the Rushfield case, the stadium, the body. If you lose track of which timeline you are in, look at Jon's face. The beard is the compass. This structure is doing something extremely smart narratively. It means Hal Jordan is not simply a casualty of the premiere's cliffhanger. He is a main character whose story is being told across 2 time periods simultaneously. The Mentor in 2016, the Mystery in 2026, every scene of them working together in the past is also building toward the emotional weight of whatever happened to him in the present. By the time the show reveals what actually became of Hal Jordan, the audience will have spent most of a season watching who he was and why it matters. That is how you make a death or a transformation land at maximum force. So is he actually dead? The trailer drops several clues that complicate the straightforward reading. The ring is missing. If a Green Lantern dies, their power ring leaves the body immediately and begins seeking a worthy successor in the sector. That is one of the most fundamental mechanics in the entire mythology. Hal's body is in that stadium, and his ring is not on his hand. Either the ring already left, which raises the question of why it didn't go to Jon, who was standing right there, or the body is not what it appears to be. The Guardians of Oa established in James Gunn's DCU context that as of 2016 there were at least 14 known alien species capable of flawless human mimicry. A decade later, that number has almost certainly grown. A shapeshifter decoy planted in the stadium stands to convince Jon that Hal is dead and shut down the investigation is exactly the kind of move a sophisticated enough enemy would make. It would also explain why the ring is absent. A fake body would not carry the real ring. The Manhunters, who have been hiding in human populations, are specifically engineered for infiltration. This is very much within their operational capability. And then there is the Gardner question. Some fans speculated that Hal's ring passed to Gardner, but the timeline renders this improbable. Guy already has his own ring during the events of the 2025 Superman film, and his ring design is noticeably different from Hal's classic band. 2 different rings, 2 different sources. Whatever happened to Hal's ring, it did not simply transfer to someone who already had one. The Parallax arc is where the trailer's most deliberate visual storytelling is happening, and it requires the full lore context to appreciate. In the stadium in Rushfield, Hal's spot of reflection, the place he keeps returning to. The stadium colors painted around him are green and yellow. In the emotional spectrum of Green Lantern mythology, green is willpower, the power source of the core. Yellow is fear, the specific emotional frequency that a Green Lantern's willpower ring cannot affect. The power source of Sinestro and the yellow entity known as Parallax. Putting Hal Jordan in a space literally surrounded by green and yellow is the show telling you something about where his arc is heading before a single line of dialogue about it has been spoken. Parallax in the comics is an ancient cosmic entity that has existed since the earliest eon of the universe. It is fear made physical, predating the emotional spectrum theory, capable of possessing even the most powerful willpower users from within. When Hal Jordan became Parallax in the classic Emerald Twilight storyline, it was not simply a villain turn, it was a tragedy. A man whose city was destroyed, whose grief became too large to survive, whose mind was compromised by a cosmic entity that had been waiting for exactly that vulnerability. He did not choose to become the enemy. He was consumed by something that had been cultivating the right emotional conditions for years. The series has clearly been building those conditions across its dual timeline. The broken vow the Guardians reference, John pressing Hal with the line, "The Guardian said you broke a vow," is likely connected to his relationship with Sinestro. A 2006 flashback apparently shows a younger Hal alongside Sinestro on a war-torn alien planet. If Hal refused to execute Sinestro when he had the chance, or if he genuinely agreed with aspects of Sinestro's critique of the Guardians' hypocrisy, it explains why Oa views him as a dangerous liability rather than their greatest asset. The seeds of Parallax are planted long before the corruption arrives. Sinestro was once considered the greatest Green Lantern in history before his authoritarian methods led to imprisonment. Hal's admiration for his mentor, combined with the Guardian's own history of moral failure, creates the exact psychological conditions a fear entity would target. If Hal Jordan ultimately succumbs to Parallax by 2026, Jon Stewart's investigation stops being about solving a murder mystery. It becomes about whether he can face and defeat the man who taught him everything. That is a season finale built to be genuinely devastating for anyone who has spent a season watching their partnership in 2016. The Manhunters are the cosmic secret underneath everything in Rush Sealed, and the lore behind them is darker than the show has yet made fully explicit. The Guardians of Oa, before they created the Green Lantern Corps, built an army of androids to enforce order across the universe. Cold, emotionless. They believed removing emotion from law enforcement would remove the possibility of corruption. What they discovered instead is that cold logic applied to the problem of eliminating crime eventually reaches the conclusion that the only reliable method is to eliminate the beings capable of committing it. The Manhunters malfunctioned along this logic pathway and committed the Sector 666 massacre, wiping out entire star systems before the Guardians could shut them down. The Red Lantern Corps exists specifically because of what the Manhunters did there. Atrocitus and the rage-powered Red Rings are the direct descendants of that massacre. The Guardians tried to erase the Manhunters from cosmic history. They are very bad at erasing things from cosmic history. One or more of these ancient androids is buried beneath Rushfield, Indiana. The show adapting the Manhunters as shapeshifters capable of hiding in human populations rather than open mechanical soldiers is exactly the right call for a prestige television paranoia thriller. The horror is not a robot in the street. It is not knowing which of your neighbors is one. The white room with the dark sphere beneath Rushfield appears to be an interdimensional portal connecting Earth to destroyed worlds from the ancient intergalactic war, the period when the Manhunters were still operational and the scale of their violence was still being measured. This is the thing that the aliens who keep exploding knew about. This is what the Manhunter operatives in human disguise are protecting. And this is what Hal and John stumbled onto in 2016 that started everything. The Easter eggs in the trailer are doing quiet but significant world building. The Janus Cosmetics sign in the abandoned mall with the woman in the half-black mask behind it. That is a nod to Roman Sionis, Black Mask, and the Sionis Cosmetics empire of Gotham City. Gotham exists in the background of this universe. Street-level Gotham lore is confirmed as part of the same continuity. The Study the Past sign above William Macon's ranch, Macon representing the growing human xenophobic movement, armed with black market alien weaponry acquired through channels similar to how Lex Luthor bootstraps alien technology, echoes John's own dialogue about the historical patterns of how fear of the outsider produces atrocity. And Guy Gardner, projecting a massive Green Lantern symbol into the night sky to summon himself, is the most Guy Gardner thing imaginable. He looked at the bat signal and decided he needed one, and built it for himself out of power ring light. Laura Linney as the Guardian of Oa in human disguise is back in the trailer, and the detail of the Guardians personally handpicking John Stewart rather than allowing the ring to select its own successor is significant. If the autonomous selection process is the standard, Abin Sur's ring chose Hal in 1986 because Hal was the nearest fearless candidate. Then, the Guardians stepping in to override that process with a direct appointment means they no longer trust the impartial mechanism, or they no longer trust Hal's ring specifically. Either the ring went somewhere they cannot account for, or the ring going to John would not have served their specific purpose for what they need him to do. The hospital scene in the past timeline where John, in a medical gown, uses a Green Lantern power battery to charge Hal's ring is the origin moment hiding inside the investigation structure. That is the first time John Stewart genuinely stepped into willpower rather than training for it. That is the moment the ring recognized where he was, even if nobody formally acknowledged it yet. The show is giving us the emotional foundation of his becoming a Lantern inside what appears to be a case file scene rather than an origin sequence. Sinestro's fixation on the Blackest Night, the cosmic prophecy of a war across all emotional spectrums of the universe, darkness consuming light and life and willpower alike, is the macro threat hiding behind the Rushfield micro-investigation. What is happening in Indiana is not the story. It is the opening of the story. The Manhunters and the Portal and the xenophobic militia and the body in the stadium are all happening because something much larger is about to arrive. The Blackest Night is Jeff Johns' magnum opus in Green Lantern comics, a universe-wide event involving the reanimation of the dead as Black Lanterns, every emotional spectrum forced into alliance against a threat that feeds on emotional energy itself. If Lanterns is building toward that across multiple seasons, everything in Rushfield makes sense as prologue. John Stewart's line anchoring the trailer, "Something is off here, I can feel it. We got 4 dead aliens on a football field. Another one just blew up half the sheriff's station. We got a case to work," is the show telling you in one breath what kind of series this is. Not a superhero show about cosmic battles. A detective show about 2 cops who happen to have power rings, working a case that keeps getting bigger and darker the closer they look at it. And what they are going to find at the center of it is not a criminal. It is the thing the Guardians buried and hoped nobody would find, and the proof that the institution Hal Jordan dedicated his life to has been lying to him since before he put the ring on. The man who taught John Stewart to be a Lantern might have been consumed by the thing the Guardians' lies created space for, and John is going to have to figure out how to be a Lantern without him, or in spite of him, or in opposition to what he became. That is the arc the trailer is pointing toward, and it is exactly the kind of story that HBO makes better than anyone else currently working in this genre. So here's what I need from you. The Parallax arc, if the show commits to turning Hal Jordan into the villain by the end of this season, does that feel like the right use of the character? Or do you think the story needs to find him a way back? And the Manhunter adaptation as human shapeshifters rather than open androids, does that feel like the right tonal choice for a prestige TV format? Or does it give up something essential about what makes them terrifying in the comics? Drop everything in the comments, because this show is doing something genuinely new with DC mythology, and I want to figure it out with you before we get there.